Life at Night in Providence supports nearly $1 billion in economic activity, $990 million. That's $620 million of direct labor income and sales tax revenue, $220 million of indirect through supply chain and business-to-business relationships, and another $147 million of impact from the wages received by the people who work in this sector, so almost $1 billion. It also supports 7,900 jobs here in the city of Providence. This is a meaningful base of employment. It should be no surprise that one in three nightlife establishments in Rhode Island is right here in Providence. So a third of our state's nightlife is here.
And I am the Director of Arts, Culture, and Tourism for the great city of Providence. And on behalf of the city of Providence and the department and all of our stakeholders within our city who have contributed to making this plan what it is, we welcome you to this Life at Night launch. I want to start off by saying thank you to our hosts here at Crib, Sabrina and Jay, and Ray. They are some of the most important cultural stakeholders that we have in the city. They produce some killer parties here in the city of Providence. They're marketing visionaries, and they have this beautiful space that they welcomed us here to launch what is really an incredible plan. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm not going to give y'all no stats. I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to leave it all to the man to give y'all all the good stuff. Because this plan speaks to what we've always known, that arts and creativity and culture are at the center of everything that this community is and this state is. And I've often said, I've come here, I moved from New York about 19 years ago to join the resident acting company at Trinity Rep. And so as an actor, I've made my life at night. Yes, with the occasional matinee. But I've also made my life at night as a gig economy worker. And so understanding how important this document is, not just to delegitimize. The economic numbers in this plan are staggering about what this sector means to this city and ultimately to this state. And so much attention is often paid to the 9-to-5 economy. And I get it, it was one of my favorite movies, working 9 to 5. I love all that. But often 9-to-5 culture has dictated what happens between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. And that is a vital part of who we are as a sector, and as an artist, I take it personally because that's how I made my living. And so, on behalf of this great city and on behalf of our culture bearers, I'm so proud to be able to share this plan with you. I'm going to say a few more things. I want to shout out my staff. The Department of Culture and Tourism are truly peaceful and second to none. And they've been holding me up in a really glorious way since taking this job 3 years ago. And as y'all can imagine, moving from being an actor in the American theater to being, sometimes it's bureaucracy and sometimes it's politics. But the thing I have to remind myself is every day it's always about people. And that's what I share with my artistry. And so really happy to be in this capacity. But I just want to shout out Dr. Michael Salkine is here, I know Rebecca Noon is here, I think Ali Berry is here, Charlotte Botsey, Dana Dimash, Leah Tucker. I think I've said these people are really incredible, and they've taught me so much about not only how to do my job, but just also how to be a better human being. And so to the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, I shout y'all out. I want to shout out the Department of Economic Development for their making sure that we didn't screw these numbers up. And so we're really appreciative of that. And shout out our Department of Planning and Development, who has helped us to really create an understanding of all the work that we're doing as a city that actually is already responding to this plan. And more importantly, we did an annual assessment of the work of the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, and part of our goal was to make sure that we tracked everything we did in this department back to our cultural plan. Because as the mayor has said so eloquently, we make these plans. This plan its genesis was in the last administration. and we're grown folk in government. We know what our charge is, to serve the people. That the mayor is all about, we make plans, but we're not always good at making sure these plans are operationalized. And so I'm eternally grateful to Mayor Brett Smiley for leading into this plan and understanding its power and supporting us in implementing the aspects. I want to thank licensing, and I see Director Lopes over here, and her synergy between licensing and small business development. It takes a village, y'all, and that's what makes us best as the smallest state in the union. To not have a complex about it, but see the possibility within it. That we can be a collaboratory, that we have a charge to collaborate and share resources and work cross-departmentally and continue to build relationships. That's our superpower. So it's, let's stop talking about shooting up in our weight class and we're out punching our weight class. Nah, y'all, we powerful. And we have all the goods here to continue this great work of continuing to show the world why Providence, Rhode Island is one of the most dynamic cities on the planet. So it is my pleasure to stop talking and to introduce my boss, a man who I'm eternally grateful for, to give me this opportunity and to continuing to see the power of arts and culture in this great community. Please give it up for Mayor Brett Smiley.
That's Joe's version of I'm not going to say too much. So we're so excited to be here tonight, and I also want to thank our hosts here at Crib. I was talking to some folks over the weekend. They asked what I had planned for the week coming up. I said, I'm going to Crib, and my reputation for being not fun went much higher. Then I described it was a Monday night press conference, and so went right back to where it was before. But we are thrilled to be able to be here tonight. Joe did a great job of thanking our co-workers, and I want to thank them as well, economic development, planning, licensing, and of course the outstanding team from Arts, Culture, and Tourism led by the incomparable Joe Wilson Jr. Thank you for your hard work, and thank you for all of you who participated in this. Like any great plan in the city of Providence, Joe referenced this, we're really good at writing plans in Providence, sometimes we're not great at implementation, but every great plan in the city of Providence, whether it's our climate justice plan, our new city's comprehensive plan, they are great plans because they're community driven. And this was 2 years of interviews and listening from individuals, leaders, owners, workers in the sector. This is your plan, and that's why we think it is going to make a meaningful difference. So this is a comprehensive analysis of life at night at the city. Some of you know a former friend of ours who used to refer passionately to the other 9 to 5. The late Frank Tatoria, the downtown improvement district, used to talk about how we need to do a better job of supporting the other 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that's what this is all about. And so after interviews and insights from dozens of business owners, hundreds of employees, a fair amount of economic analysis, the results are in. And while we are not surprised, we are still grateful to be able to quantify the importance of this sector to our economy. Life at Night in Providence supports nearly $1 billion in economic activity, $990 million. That's $620 million of direct labor income and sales tax revenue, $220 million of indirect through supply chain and business-to-business relationships, and another $147 million of impact from the wages received by the people who work in this sector, so almost $1 billion. It also supports 7,900 jobs here in the city of Providence. This is a meaningful base of employment. It should be no surprise that one in three nightlife establishments in Rhode Island is right here in Providence. So a third of our state's nightlife is here. We're very pleased to be joined by the state's Chief Marketing Officer, Anika Kimball-Huntley. Thank you for being here. And we want the state to know that Providence is the center of nightlife in Rhode Island. And so as we think about promoting and supporting this sector, the city can't do it alone. That Providence is where it's at. I don't think any of us are surprised by that. Now here's a couple interesting things that I would not have guessed. On a per capita basis, we have more nighttime establishments in Providence than New York City. We have a higher share of students than Philadelphia, and we have a more international city than Los Angeles. This is a community that is vibrant, that is diverse, that loves its nightlife options. We know that people come throughout the region to come enjoy the evenings and the late nights and the early mornings here in the city of Providence. We also know that it's a sector that's experienced some challenges, though, and that's the work ahead. That's what we want to do. The reason that we're quantifying this is because, one, we want to dispel any notion and dispense of any stigma about this industry, and two, to help it succeed and thrive. This is $1 billion industry, and if there were $1 billion industry in any other sector, we would be throwing resources at it. And so we need to treat this the same way. So we heard that safety is a concern for patrons, for employees. We heard that transportation is a concern, particularly late night, overnight, middle of the night transportation options. We know that inflation and rising costs are a problem, and we know that limited access to capital for new businesses and business expansion are a problem. And so we are now going to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work of helping address those concerns. We're working within city departments to make it easier to get approvals, everything from business loans to new business applications to permitting and licensing. We're working on the physical built environment, both for public safety, but also to draw people into our venues. We're going to make sure we have really exciting plans for new lighting and public design to ensure that particularly our main business corridors are places where people feel comfortable walking at all hours, that draws people in and brings new audience for you. We're going to be working with all of you on sound and soundproofing to ensure that we figure out a way to reconcile the conflict between residential neighborhoods and thriving nightlife businesses. And I will say, and I think many of you have heard this from me before, you know that I have a concern because I hear it from my constituents about noise. But there is another way. And I'm so grateful for the work that has come out of this. And as a city, for the last 2 years, we've been throwing a lot of sticks at the problem, but we also need to now involve some carrots as well. And I have had my mind expanded, and I have grown to see that there are programs elsewhere that can help get to this same issue so that you can enjoy a loud night at the club without disturbing the neighbors, and there is a world where both can live together, and we're going to work with you on that. Joe mentioned, and I referenced as well, that one of the things that I'm particularly obsessed about is around implementation and action. We write these great plans, but we want to ensure that something actually comes of it, that we actually follow the recommendations. And so I'm excited tonight, the night of the launch of this study, that we can actually make a small step, but a meaningful step nonetheless, to implement one of the first recommendations that is in the actual study. We heard from employees and workers in this industry that when they get off work at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, bus service is either limited or non-existent, and sometimes parking options make it such that some employees feel unsafe walking to their car. And so I'm excited to say, through a partnership that I'm going to talk about in just a second here, that we've been able to make at least a small step forward on a new option for folks. Additionally, when employees who do have cars can drive to work, oftentimes they're taking a spot that should go to a patron. It's one less customer, perhaps, in your business. And so I want to welcome and thank John Langford from SPIN. Folks know about our micromobility options here in the city. It's good for our climate justice plan. It's good for people to get around. It's one less car on the street. Last year in the city of Providence alone, these are the scooters and bikes in our city. There were nearly 500,000 rides in Providence. 473,000 rides in 2024 in Providence. And so thanks to their partnership and the recommendations that we heard from all of you, we're able to announce tonight that nightlife workers will receive a 50% discount on 2 rides per night. So you want to take a bike or scooter to work, half off, thanks to the generosity of SPIN, one less car on the road, one easier way to get home. Additionally, we're launching a pilot program with Uber, a $5,000 pilot, to start to figure out how we can do a similar program for rideshare. So employees, when they get off a shift, they can call themselves an Uber, get a discount because they work in this sector that is so important. So this $5,000 pilot is going to help us start to test the program, figure out what works, and then scale it up. We are excited to provide transportation options for your employees and for those of you who work late at night, understanding that RIPTA does not work for most people in this sector. And so we want to make it safer, easier to get around. Lastly, I want to thank and acknowledge the partnership that we have with Providence City Council. We've got a lot of work ahead. There are some statutes that we're going to try to change. We couldn't do that with our friends in the City Council. We're joined tonight by the City Council President, Council President Rachel Miller. Rachel, thank you. And thank you to all of your colleagues. At this point, I want to welcome Joe back up to the podium. We're going to answer any questions that the press might have. We'll take them together, and then we'll get back to partying. All right? Thank you all. You guys are going to have to shout because we got a spotlight in our face here. So
you mentioned RIPTA hours. Can you explain more about what are those conversations and how soon could we see expanded hours there?
So RIPTA is a state agency that we don't have direct control. We have seen over the now pushing 3 years that I've been in office that there is constant annual threats to service generally for RIPTA. And my administration and the City Council feels the same way. I feel confident speaking on their behalf. Believes that we need to not just protect against cuts, but actually enhance service. But unfortunately, we've been playing defense on RIPTA for some time. And so I think given the funding constraints that they have, and you have to ask them about what their plans are for expansion, we thought the most practical way forward to service this sector was through alternatives, which is why Spin, and again, we're grateful to them, Uber, we're grateful to them. We think are good, viable alternatives in the interim, while RIPTA works on trying to overcome the setback they had from the pandemic and actually protect against cuts, nevertheless, expansions that we don't know when they're going to be made.
And then following up on that, what is your position on moving the bus hub from Kennedy Plaza, given that that would be an ideal situation, ideal location for people who are trying to get downtown to reach some of these bars and restaurants?
So the city's been actively engaged in the bus hub relocation conversation, which is now centered around a new modern hub adjacent to the train station, which I think is a good solution. I think we can have it just as convenient in terms of transfers and accessibility. It also has modality in that you can come in via train or leave via train so that you can complete your entire trip if you work in Providence and live outside of Providence with one stop. And then finally, the riders and the drivers deserve modern facilities. And so a new modern bus hub will be an enhancement to the ridership. And I'm excited that we are making slow but progress on that front.
Lastly, you mentioned safety conversations with Providence Police. I mean, we had the incident last night of Motion. Can you speak to how we are protecting people as more and more people want to take part in these different experiences? How are we making sure they're getting home safely?
Yeah, the incident last night or over the weekend, there were actually Providence Police in the area, and so it was through a regular patrol on Broad Street that we happened to be able to diffuse the situation as best as possible, and I have confidence in the Board of Licenses for taking the appropriate steps to ensure that all of our clubs live up to their obligations as nightlife providers. And I will say, the vast majority of our nightlife providers are good actors, play by the rules, provide an incredible experience without issue. And so we have the structures in place for when something does get out of hand and there was responsibility that we believe the club owner needed to take responsibility for, and we take appropriate action. But that is the exception and not the rule, given the extent that part of the survey represents, the extent of this industry. What you end up reading is about 1 or 2 or 3 bad apples, and the reality is the majority of the people who enjoy late night experiences here in the city do so safely and do so with a great experience.
Mayor?
The micro-mobility options.
I'm sorry, you guys are going to work it out. We really can't see, so.
We'll go this way.
Just kind of expanding on that safety notion. In addition to Motion, there have been a couple other recent unfortunate incidents, including Sage and Mezzo. You talk about the stigma. How can the city work to ensure people, that these are just isolated incidents, and when they go out, they're not going to have to worry about their safety?
So part of it is through moments like this, where we talk about the breadth and the impact of this industry, and we talk about how desirable it is here. Some of those statistics, most as diverse as Los Angeles, more clubs per capita than New York City, and we know that we're a destination. And so I think a majority of patrons actually know what's here. What we're trying to do is make sure that everyone who's not a regular patron understands that they can have a great, safe, fun, late-night experience here in the city of Providence. Where there are no problem spots, we bring in Providence Police in a way that is supportive to the environment. They're not there to do anything other than to be present and to make sure that people see a visible show of someone in a position of authority that provides that sense of safety. We do a lot of work downtown in that respect as well. And so I think the stigma is overblown, and we know the old adage about press coverage, and we expect that isolated incidents will get coverage, but we're going to keep lifting up and telling the stories and help celebrating the spaces where people find community. Joe talks about this with passion, and I'll share as well. For many of us, often when we were younger, but sometimes as older adults as well, nightlife was where we found community, where we found our people. Joe and I are both gay. We found early on, and right after we came out in gay clubs, we found our people, and it's helped shape us become the people that we are today. That's certainly true for me. That is happening in various communities in our city on a nightly basis here, whether it's the LGBT community, the Latino community, the hip hop community. There is a place for everyone in our great city, and there is a space where they can find their people and help celebrate and embrace who they are. I think that's happening organically, and these bad incidents are the exception and not the rule, and we do what we need to do to make sure that either they reform their ways or that they don't get to continue to operate. But the vast majority of these businesses are providing a great experience for their guests, and we're glad that they are, and tonight is helping celebrate and quantify the impact of that and to make sure that they know that they're wanted and valued here in the city of Providence.
Mayor, with regard to rideshare, rideshare is an incredible development in recent history, particularly of urban areas, enhancing nightlife. The problem that everyone faces is that as the night proceeds, people arrive. Everyone leaves at the same time. What can be done to enhance, particularly in cold weather, if you will, the pickup patterns in downtown Providence?
Yeah, so this is one of the things Frank used to talk about. This is a part of the other 9 to 5. This is the not as glamorous part of city government that we are passionate about, my team. Most of the city is asleep when the clubs let out. And so when we think about coordination of services, when we think about allocation of parking spaces, when we think about snow removal and pothole filling and construction closures, we too often neglect those businesses for whom their busy time is 2 a.m. And rideshare is a piece of that. And so better management of pickup locations, the preservation of pickup and drop-off locations, what we would call sidewalk and curb management, is a way in which we can provide a better, safer experience for all. And so part of this study and part of the cross-departmental work that's happening in city government now is making sure that we're not just thinking about how we coordinate what happens at the curb and meters and such during 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., but the other 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And rideshare is part of that. I made the reference earlier to the point about the number of micromobility rides last year, 473,000 rides. In most cases, that would be car trips in our city. And so we're helping take car trips off the road to both reduce congestion, reduce competition for parking, but also make it just an easier, better place to get around. By the way, doing it carbon-free and an all-electric version. But rideshare is also a really important option, and we know that people are safer, that they're out enjoying themselves and they're getting a ride home, but we need to make sure that we're doing a better job of coordinating how those pickups happen, where the pickups happen, designating pickup and drop-off zones. Bigger cities are ahead of the curve on this, and we're about to catch up.
Nightlife workers will receive the 50% off discount. How will they have to prove that they actually work in nightlife? How long will that program go on for? Is that for a year or is it forever?
If we could connect you with the SMIT folks offline, we'd be happy to talk through those details.
Sure. And then the other thing, sorry, Pat, that I have, a lot of the nightlife workers that I've actually talked to say that marketing is one of the biggest challenges that they face. The city and the state have basically ignored them, and a lot of the problems are because of these massive perception issues. So how are you going to commit to help market nightclubs in Providence, not just bars and restaurants?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to take that question. And I will say that as, first of all, I mentioned earlier, that apart from this study, we're also working, maybe I didn't mention it, a derivative of our cultural plan is the work that we've been doing in the cultural heritage tourism marketing space. Because also within our cultural plan, our stakeholders, the artists, the culture bearers said that we wanted a place in the narrative of how y'all talk about Providence. And the fact that, we spend so much time trying to out-colonial Boston and Philadelphia, and not realizing, as the mayor has said, we are as international a city as Los Angeles. And so we've been meeting in a series of roundtable meetings over the course of 6 months with RI Commerce, with the Providence Warwick Convention and Visitors Bureau, with the Providence Tourism Council, and a shout out to Alexis and Shannon for helping us sponsor tonight, the Providence Tourism Council. But we are working now with our stakeholders to make sure that we're telling a fuller story of who we are as a city. And what we're finding, even in the research of the CBB, there's a lot of acronyms here, I apologize, is that the perceptions of Providence for people who come outside of the state far vary from those who are coming in from outside of this city within this state. And as the mayor has said, a lot of this narrative is absolutely overblown. And I may get in trouble for this, but I don't care at this point, because I feel passionate about this. As a guy who was born and raised in New Orleans, I saw the same kind of narrative happening in terms of these communities of culture that hold culture. And there's oftentimes a need to venture toward these once, if we have a city that's as populated as New York in terms of our nightlife, these incidences, while they're terrible, this city is doing a damn good job, really, of making sure that the residents feel safe. And I'm proud of the work that our police department is doing and that all of our public safety officials are doing. But we have to confront the fact that a lot of this narrative is based in cultural misperception, and I'm being polite here. And that's got to stop. It's got to stop. And I think that the more that this state, as I'm thinking of where we are in the country right now and coming off of MLK Day last Monday, that we continue to have deep, deep work to do in this community around our cultural competence. And while there may be an assault on these things we call DEI, there's something to be said for teaching us all to be able to see each other a little better and to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And so as long as I'm the director of the Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism, as long as I am in this position as a narrator and as a champion for this sector in a city that I've called my home now for 20 years, I will not allow this narrative to stick. And I will challenge anybody about the numbers here in the city of Providence. And to challenge them to really look at what's going on in this city. And if they're not going to be a part of celebrating who we are, then get out the way. There is no need to be destructive here. And that's got to stop. Yeah. I'm done.
How will the initiatives in this report specifically support small businesses and local entrepreneurs within Providence's nightlife scene?
So I encourage you to read the recommendations in the back of the report. There's a series of actions between infrastructure investments, public service enhancements, helping these businesses access capital, which we know, we've talked about the stigma a little bit. Sometimes banks have a hard time understanding or have faith or have biases around lending to this sector. And so either through the Providence Business Loan Fund or through relationships that we're going to help foster with the traditional banking sector to help make sure there's access to capital. And then to make sure that that the workers in this sector have their needs met too. Transportation we've talked about and some other concerns. And so this is not a plan that's going to get implemented overnight. I'm excited to say that we've started to take some of the steps tonight, but this is going to be several years of work. And to zoom out just a touch, Joe mentioned the cultural heritage plan for the city. This was one of the recommendations in that plan. And so we are trying to be really faithful to the community-driven work that has happened to develop these plans. One of those recommendations was to develop this plan. We've done it. Now we're going to start implementing these recommendations, and it's going to be a series of years. And then as we evolve, we'll be looking for new recommendations. We expect this industry to evolve, but we want the business owners in this sector to know that we consider them partners and that we want to help them overcome their obstacles.
Last question.
Please.
The state has a series of taxes that literally chip away at virtually every aspect of the profitability of a variety of styles of businesses downtown, particularly in the retail and the hospitality environment. You've got budget challenges coming up. What can be done to sort of hold back, if you will, on additional tax increases, particularly as commercial rents explode in a, if you will, a challenged city?
As we've done in the past with other sectors and in other environments, the city's legislative agenda isn't always just about what directly benefits the city's budget, but rather what's best for the city of Providence. And so we'll be looking if there are initiatives or legislative proposals that we can throw our weight behind, driven by the business owners in this sector, of ways in which they think they can find relief. I know, many of you know, I was in state government during the pandemic, and I worked closely with industry leaders then around some relief through those very difficult years. But I have also heard that, you know, in many cases, people felt like they survived the pandemic, and then it's always, you know, kind of one step forward, sometimes two step backwards. That it's a tough business, but we want them to know that we're willing to be shoulder to shoulder with them through state policy choices, often taxation choices, for what's in the best interest of the health of this sector of the economy. Like I said earlier, if there were any other billion-dollar industry in our city, we would be running at them to say, what do you need, how can we help, how can we support this industry thrive? That's our message today, that we recognize and see you all as equally important, and we're here to be partners and supporters, but we often, just like the report itself, we need to hear from you, where are those pain points, and how can we help advocate for relief when the pain is coming from someone else.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the party.